While it can be debated just how harsh the treatment of the citizens of South Carolina was, there is no question it was brutal. Major General Sherman was clear. He says, "We are not only fighting hostile armies, but hostile people, and must make old and young, rich and poor, feel the hard hand of war, as well as their organized armies." Sherman goes on to say, "The feelings were universal, and pervaded all ranks, and thought she, South Carolina, thoroughly deserved severe treatment." Union foragers would go off looking for food and supplies that could be brought back. Foragers would sometimes go as far as 20 miles in advance of the troops, setting themselves up for skirmishing and being captured and often executed. One forager writes, "If a rich find was made, the men were loaded with all they can carry, and the torch did away with the balance. With the exception of some homes, nothing survived. Barns and other outbuildings, wells, animals and farming implements would all be destroyed." But Sherman did have rules on dealing with non-combatants, and that will only apply to their homes. While he wanted the population to suffer greatly, especially the women who are encouraging their husbands and sons to fight, he did put limits on his soldiers' actions. All the orders and regulations considering the behavior of his troops that were used during his march to the sea will remain the same for the Carolinas. But the troops are no longer in Georgia. They are in South Carolina, the state that started it all. Many say South Carolina is the cradle of secession. It is the birthplace of rebellion. It is the reason for so many deaths. And it's payback time. While most may not exceed orders, they will certainly push the envelope. On January 31st, Special Order No. 55, from October 17, 1864, was republished. Among other things, it says foragers may not pillage houses, taking food only if it doesn't leave the people destitute. An officer writes, "We hear there are strict orders against burning." This would be a problem. There was destruction of private property, homes in particular, in South Carolina when there shouldn't have been. On February 5, 1865, Sherman issued General Order No. 10, which included the warning, "Burning of property is strictly prohibited unless accidental. Any soldiers caught would be arrested." Only corps commanders were to have the power to destroy mills, homes, cotton gins, etc. Official warnings were posted in the form of circulars and letters to commanders warning them to stop this behavior, while other warnings are to be read to every regiment, battery, and detachment. Sherman's orders say not to burn homes occupied by peaceful families, which there will be few, but unoccupied or abandoned homes were fair game. Sherman says if the home wasn't important enough to defend, then it wasn't important. Unfortunately, South Carolinians didn't know staying home could very well have saved their house. Sherman further says, in districts where the army is unmolested, no destruction of property should be permitted. Where guerrillas, bushwhackers, or inhabitants molesting the march, the commanders were to enforce a devastation more or less relentless according to the measure of hostility. On at least one occasion, a woman with unbearable rebel spirit would bring fire to her home. Any attempt to hide or destroy food to keep from the Union troops would result in the complete destruction of everything. Sherman says, "Of course the enemy will carry off and destroy some forage, but I will burn the houses where people burn the forage, and they will get tired of it." Other Union troops, stragglers in particular, didn't care to follow the rules and orders. There would be no one around to report on their actions. Homes that were left standing by the regular army were often reduced by these stragglers. Not all the destruction was done by Union troops. Confederate General Wheeler had been living off the land for 6 months. His troops would also raid farms. Sherman writes to Halleck regarding foraging, says, "Much has been carried off by Wheeler. Wheeler's men are responsible for at least some of the destruction and theft and will be investigated for it." On February 2nd, one soldier writes, "We saw a great many carcasses of cattle, which the enemy killed on the plantations and rendered unfit for use by our army. Wherever Wheeler halted, his men rifled and plundered everything of value, and if opposed, burned down the house. And to such an extent that Wheeler will be investigated by the Inspector General's office looking for enough irregularities to suspect inefficiency." What they found didn't matter. They didn't have a better man for the job than Wheeler. Governor McGrath sees the threat and issues his warning. He tells his citizens, especially in the low country, if they find themselves in the path of Sherman, they should evacuate. They should take what they can, bury what they can't take, and destroy what they can't bury. Most take his advice. A Union soldier reports, We were told the governor had advised, then ordered the people below the Salkehatchie River to come north of the river, and almost everyone had crossed over believing the Yankees could not pass. Evacuees were mostly women and children. So many go to Columbia, looked upon as a city of refuge and safe from Sherman, that the population swells from 7,000 to 16,000, maybe as many as 20,000. Thousands more will go towards Aiken and Augusta, or until their horses could carry them no further. This was an invitation for complete destruction. It won't just be people looking for safety in Columbia. Businesses along the coast will send inventory upstate, mostly to Columbia for protection. Expensive furniture and liquor being the most common products shipped away for their safety. In the end, very little will be saved. More than a few villages and towns will completely evacuate. As the march began, one soldier reports, all the whites seem to have fled before us, except in a few instances, poor whites have been left in the dwellings of their rich neighbors in hopes to save houses. According to W. Gilmore Simms, from Savannah, for 80 miles along the route of the army, the habitations of just 2 white families remained. Those evacuated villages in many cases will be erased from the map, either by being burned or dismantled. Today only the name exists for many of these villages. Larger towns and cities were treated differently. Certainly public buildings will be destroyed, but homes weren't necessarily targeted. With all the fires from buildings and forests, Sherman March earned the nickname, the Smokey March. A soldier with the 17th Corps writes, the country was converted into one vast bonfire. The middle of the finest day looked black and gloomy, for a dense smoke arose on all sides, clouding the very heavens. Familiar clouds of smoke are becoming more numerous every day. Can count 10 to 20 red clouds into the heaven every night.